I would like to introduce Jennifer Maisel. I got it right?
Yes, you did.
An accomplished playwright who is our first Dow House Fellow of 2021. A graduate of Cornell University, Jennifer received her MFA in dramatic writing from NYU's Tisch School of Arts. Jennifer teaches playwriting at USC and television and screenwriting for the Stevens College MFA program. She has participated in several political theater actions, including the recent After Orlando. Jennifer has written more than a dozen plays, many critically acclaimed in productions off-Broadway in Los Angeles, London, and throughout the country. She has received the Kennedy Center's Fund for New American Plays Award, their award for Promising New Voice in American Theater, as well as for Playwrights of Extraordinary Promise. She won the South Coast Repertory's California Playwrights Competition and was a finalist for many awards, including the O'Neill Theatre Conference. Her screenplay for Lost Boy was filmed recently, and she has written movies for NBC, ABC, MTV, and Lifetime, and was a staff writer on the TV series Related. You can read about all her achievements online. Not surprisingly, Backstage include Jennifer in their favorite female playwrights, and the Dramatist magazine named her one of their ones to watch. Now over to Jennifer to tell us about the play she has been working on here. There will be a time for questions after her presentation, and I will call on you then. Okay, Jennifer, you're on.
Hello, hi. Sorry about that. The Wi-Fi was just not happy with Zoom today, so maybe it was O'Neill himself saying, "What is this thing?" I have no idea. Anyway, I have been working on a new piece here, which is a kind of riff off of Charlotte Perkins Gilman's The Yellow Wallpaper, and I was going to read to you the first 15 minutes of the piece-ish. See how long it takes me to get through it. So here we go. Yellow Wallpaper 2.0 2020, a riff that owes an enormous debt to Charlotte Perkins Gilman. It's 2020, early to mid-pandemic. An old room in an apartment that has had glorious better days and innumerable sad ones. An apartment that's full of potential with the awareness it'll take a shit ton of work to get it there. A hoarder's delight that has been somewhat decluttered to reveal furniture with a decided 50s flair. It has not aged well, but has the feeling of secrets in its air. A bed with an old headboard, an ancient recliner, a laptop, an iPad, iPhone seem anachronistic, but let us know we are in the now and not the then. The Yellow Wallpaper 2.0 2020 takes place in today's world. When casting, please bear in mind that there are no specifics with regards to race or ethnicity unless otherwise stated. T is in her mid-late 40s. She's either Black, Asian, or Jewish, or a combination thereof. John is in his 50s. I wrote this play while the pandemic was ebbing, with a specific goal in mind of a flexibility of staging, because who knows what will happen in the coming months. T and John never need to touch. They never need to be in the same space. T could voice John. This play could be staged inside or outside. This play could be staged physically or virtually. It could be intimate. It could be distanced. What we've learned this year is that theater is many things. Let's run with it. T speaks. It is extremely rare that ordinary people like John and me are gifted a classic pre-war six to live in. This kind of thing usually happens to luckier people than us, people who have an ease in their days and the confidence to accept such presents from the universe without doubt. People who don't really know what it is to work, to give up one thing to have another when you really want both. Luckier people than us, we say, but we are lucky that we found each other after so many years of searching, lucky to have Cam. We practice gratitude with an underlying note of disbelief that that practice means anything, trying to subvert what we think of as our fate, trying our best to thank the universe without snark and failing. A classic pre-war six on the Upper West Side, an inheritance from John's great uncle, an unexpected payout for years of inviting him to coffee, to dinner, to holidays, even though John was never invited back. I thought the Godfather ask was over the top, but John said his uncle had had too much sadness in his life and not enough joy. And truly, I was so preoccupied at the beginning of CAM, and I would say religious tokenism is not my thing. I relented just to make John happy. It is easier sometimes to make John happy. John had not been inside since he was a small child until the day in January we opened the door. In a sense, it was exactly how he remembered it all, underneath what his uncle left behind. There's something in the air here, I told him, and he laughed at me because he is the practical one and does not think a space can hold a mood, a spirit, a personality the way I do. I wondered if there were an essence of his uncle still wandering the rooms. He laughed again and told me to burn some sage, which I was going to order, but then fell down the rabbit hole of learning that burning certain kinds of sage and performing cleansing rituals is now considered cultural appropriation. And I was having a hard time determining what would be okay and what would not, and I really wanted to do it. The place was screaming for it, but I didn't want to be secretive about it, and I didn't want to ask a colleague who might know because of the emotional burden of explaining, but also because I didn't want to seem like an idiot who couldn't find an answer by Googling, even though I had and could not. I burned a pine-scented candle instead when John ran out for chicken and plantains, and thanked his uncle out loud for his generosity and for leaving all of his stuff, which I promised to respectfully reuse, repurpose, recycle, though obviously I have not gotten very far with that. John is a doctor, not a doctor, which would have been so useful right now, but a PhD in theater history with tenure at an uptown Ivy League university, as he never fails to work into the conversation when he's being introduced. If he were a doctor, he might be a little more rightfully apprehensive at the moment. He jollied me along when I pushed to move in immediately after protesting it would be hell to declutter and renovate while living here. That may have been his way of setting precedent for absolving himself of having to do anything to get us settled in just a few weeks, because he'd look at the frazzled me from his position, gently organizing his papers, and say, "It was your plan." My argument that if he didn't help, he'd be living with Cam 24/7 in our 600 square foot one bedroom rental if the virus caused a lockdown the way it was happening overseas moved him the slightest bit faster, but he made it clear that I was being anal retentive and nuts, being a little hysterical, in quotes, about something that seems to be like a glorified cold. But when I called the movers, he didn't protest and brought home boxes for me to pack. He thinks he is above the news, the hard news, not the arts news, but I saw this coming and ordered cartons of toilet paper and paper towels, diapers and hand sanitizer, figuring we would use it all anyway eventually. And believe me, when the shelves were unstocked, there was part of me that wanted to withhold from him and only allocate one sheet at a time. But of course, the laundry is somehow my job. So I think he saw the light of Cam sleeping in his own room at the end of the tunnel of the impossibility of having sex when he was between us, nursing on me while simultaneously kicking John in the balls all night. That is what helped John be helpful. I will talk about the apartment. It must have been a glorious place. The ceilings, the moldings, what I've seen of the wood floors when we've pulled back the carpet. I can imagine the glee John's uncle must have felt carrying his bride over the threshold. John carried his laptop and his pride at saying, "This is mine." There's a hallway lined with bookshelves of books 3 deep and a kitchen that must have last been updated in the 60s, which is when John's aunt passed, pregnant with his cousin he could never meet. Some people would have moved away from the memories, but John's uncle could not. He kept the apartment and everything that was in it and everything that came into it. And now it is ours. We are lucky and grateful and lucky. But there's something strange about the apartment, I feel it. This room that is to be Cam's room when all is said and done, it's the one I cleared first, bagging things to sell, give, donate, and toss, only now selling and giving and donating are impossible. But going through the stacks stacked against the walls bit by bit got me to reveal the wallpaper, peeling and pulled off in strips in several places around the head of the bed and the wall across, the bars on the windows. After all, this is New York. One of those butt-ass ugly patterns that makes you feel unsteady if you look at it for too long. The color is so repellent, puke yellow, kind of both dirty and faded where the sun could get through the cracks of the piles. And if you touch it, it feels like centuries of residue comes off on your fingers that just won't wash away. As if I am not already washing my hands all the time anyway now. Yes, there is something strange about the apartment, but there's also something strange about the world. It is insidious, the growing, pervasive feeling that something has gone wrong, that the world looks much the same, but there's an invisible menace that could attack you at any time, that a friend, a stranger, a passerby, a subway turnstile, a grocery delivery could be a threat. John does not believe in synchronicity, but I can't help to think it exists. I see it as a joke the universe is playing, gifting us this home, gifting us this shelter in place, aligning ourselves with some puppeteer of my life to dangle in front of my fucking face, this yellow wallpaper. I get the joke. The hint, the kick in the ass, the way the universe knows I need the yellow wallpaper in my face right in front of me so I can't possibly ignore it or distract myself away from it. I am in here now, this room with the heinous yellow wallpaper, because this is the room at the very end of the hall where the door can cordon me off, because I have a sniffle. John diagnosed me with allergies. Have I mentioned he is not a doctor? The dust he claims, citing my eagerness to forego renovations and a deep cleaning crew to get in before the city shut down, which happened just as I predicted. Renovations aren't even allowed now, I say, so what does it matter? I do not say, and who is doing the cleaning, so don't complain? I do not say that. With John, it is good to make only one point. He does not understand what anxiety these sniffles cause. He never gets sick, he reminds me. It goes through my head without stopping, the wondering of could this possibly be the virus? I've been so careful, more careful than most. I covered my mouth, wore gloves, took the stairs before anyone else. I washed my hands, singing happy birthday to me twice, and sanitized all the high-touch surfaces at 6, 9, noon, 3, 6, and before bed. I bought masks and wore them back when people gave me crazy lady looks. And I covered Cam's stroller with that plastic cover that's really for rain and snow, but seemed to be like a barrier against the fear of something touching him that could infect, which would be my fault. I wiped the whole cover down before I release him, and he stopped having baby head smell and started to smell vaguely of lemon Lysol wipes, which could have been sad, but instead was somehow comforting. And I have a sniffle. The moment I felt it come on, the tickle in my throat, the oddness in my nose, I could not stop thinking of anything else. It locked into my thoughts as I dragged Cam's stroller up the stairs, bump, 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 waking him up, hearing him sobbing, glad he is behind the plastic sheeting. And I threw open the door, parked Cam, and fled to this room, slipping on gloves so I could grab wipes, tissues, and of course, my book on the way. John was on a work call, a Zoom, which is why I was walking with Cam anyway. John has such delicate hearing and can be thrown off easily, but at that moment I didn't care whether his entire department saw me fluttering around the house in panic, and I only wanted to get away from infecting them since I couldn't escape my infectious self. So I broke our agreement of keeping Cam quiet and occupied while one of us is on a professional Zoom, which seems to be him more than me because I have not landed yet. But I adjunct at 5, let me repeat that, 5 schools around the city, 1 for each borough, it seems, and the semester is over. The summer class is in flux, and though my standing is less than his, my work, in my opinion, is infinitely more than that of the tenured elite. And when John has told me he envies my varied commutes, I am ready to eviscerate him, because I know too well his attachment to his stroll to classes where he formulates his thoughts. And I've had a deep envy of him putting aside that luxury for his thoughts when every commute of mine is filled with making lists, grading papers, communicating with the daycare or the sitter, and worrying about what comes next for Cam, whether he is hitting his developmental targets in an appropriate way, or how he will save for college if he wants to go somewhere that's not the elite uptown Ivy League institution where he will run into his dad on campus, even if he can get in. I broke our agreement about professionalizing our home space for workspace and fled to this room because I have a sniffle. I locked the door. This is John and T. T, go away. The door is locked. I locked it. T, stay back. Cam is crying and I had to mute myself and turn off my camera and claim my internet is unstable in the chat. We agreed. I have a sniffle. Oh, T, don't. I'm sure it's allergies. I'm glad you are so sure. I have a class, T, and I have the virus. I have to work. We are formulating the fall semester amid chaos. I cannot go near the baby. You've just been with him all day. I cannot go near you. T. He deliberately says that in the voice he knows melts me, the voice he used to use before the baby, the voice he used to use when he tied my wrists together firmly but lightly, yet in a way I could make myself believe he would be the only one able to let me escape. And he'd tell me what to do and what he was going to do. The voice I loved giving into because it took all responsibility off of my plate and let me sink into being a receptacle to be filled. I have a sniffle. I don't say no to him. I don't. I work my way around it. When was the last time all responsibility was off my plate? John bangs on the door. The baby cries. I hate the odd pain in my breast filling when Cam does that. John walks away from the door. I'm sure in hopes I will follow because I am the one Cam wants most of the time. I am milk personified after all, and I am always there, even when I don't want to be. I am sitting in the middle of this room, and for the first time, I can take it in. Because for the first time, I have the quiet to take it in. I bet I could be fond of this room, not the nagging wallpaper, but the room. I did not know that wallpaper could harangue, but it does. There's a big window that overlooks the street that would usually be crowded with commuters, but now has a ghost town eeriness of one man walking his dog and realizing since no one is on the street, he can give himself the gift of not picking up its shit. I am seeing, and I'm a little in awe of his daring. It's actually daring. Another window is full of a treetop whose branches brush lightly against the pane. I can see the way the sunlight comes through the tree, then the window, around the bars, onto the pattern of the wallpaper. It makes the pattern look like bulging eyes with a twisted neck. I wonder if Cam will see it too, waking from his naps. I know John would not, because if you ask him to name the shape of a cloud in the sky, he always says cloud. I have an unkind thought about him, John, that John teaches about theater because he doesn't have the imagination to make it, that he failed at making it. And it comes to me that I have a sniffle and I cannot safely leave this room and I have nothing to do. Nothing I can do except read my book and formulate my thoughts in the shadow of the nagging, haranguing yellow wallpaper. This feeling is one I dimly remember, this kind of space in my existence, the time spread out where nobody wanted something from me, where my only obligation was to my own agenda. I wasted so much of that time back then deciding that I was lonely, defining myself as lonely, that I didn't realize I was free. The furniture in this room isn't, great furniture. A large bed we will get rid of with its cranky headboard, a space for the crib to move into, a recliner I had hoped Housing Works would pick up, but they closed for the duration. The recliner reminds me of the one my parents had in the corner of their living room that no one ever sat in, but that I would always hide behind, a place where I knew I was safe, a corner of the world that was mine. John's sister has come by. I can hear her voice rise and fall, though I can't make out the words. She, like John, does not feel destined to come down with the virus. I do not think her voice sounds like it is muffled with a mask. She's one of those women, Jenny, John's sister, who says she begrudges no one any luck they have, but who blinks a little too rapidly when she says it. She beats herself up, I know, for not having been kinder to her uncle, and does not envy our current apartment as it is, but the potential of it. She is magic with children, and I think more times than I want to admit that Cam would do better with her as his mom, and I see that in her thoughts as well. Their voices are rising and falling and hushing each other so the baby won't wake. I am going to formulate my thoughts. I am ABD, as I call it, all but dissertation, as I must always try to formulate my thoughts in the cracks of my days somehow, with the teaching and the parenting and the feeding, by cooking in from my own orifices, and the packing and moving and surviving. The thing that never gets done on the to-do list is the writing, because how can I write without the time for thoughts? I studied American literature, focusing on work by women, ignoring my father's comment, "They let you do that?" And working in publishing, reading manuscripts for romance novels for the longest time, which made me despair of ever finding the great love, but also of understanding what came after the culmination of desire that was always followed by the end. Happily ever after, the end. When I left to go back for my doctorate, I was sure my bosses took bets on whether I would last in my quest for the answer to the what happens after. And every few months they would check in and say, "There was no one like you. You were always welcome to come back." And it didn't feel good. It felt as if these men were clocking my presumed failure. It is not easy to find the literature of after that's written by a woman that's not glib chick lit I read page after page of for work. I spent my studies wondering if happily ever after existed in a documentable form, wondering why so much was written about an aspirational future and hopefulness, but not what that future really would be. Another student slipped me Charlotte Perkins Gilman's Yellow Wallpaper. "Read it," she said, over soy lattes at a little bookstore coffee house we flocked to after seminars. "It will answer your question." I think my question had been more about reading what the happy of happily ever after was than about this kind of after. I wonder sometimes if that student was trying to enlighten me or sabotage me, because the story, somehow that story, would just not leave me. Fascinating how back in the day, novel reading was considered hazardous to the susceptible minds of women, a gateway drug. To get the story out of my system, I wrote a paper about Gilman and her lens on the after in a time where domesticity was prized, where rest cure would be thought of as soothing a delicate nervous system, where motherhood was supposed to be the answer for fulfillment, not work or intellectual pursuits by any means, and presented it at a conference. It was during that conference that I met John, though it was not in a moment of him hearing me present and falling for my intellect. It was in a moment of too many little bottles of vodka in my hotel room mini fridge and the algorithm on Tinder. I kept reading the Yellow Wallpaper, comforted me as I attempted to define my PhD topic like a friend. John got intense, life got frantic, a wedding, fertility treatments, 127 students who needed me, more fertility treatments, a surrender, then Cam, the pandemic. And there were so many times when I would reread Charlotte's story and think, hoping she would not consider it a betrayal, a rescuer sounds really nice. Cam waits and cries, my breasts fill again. I love my son, I do. It didn't start that way. I expected to feel a rush. I was told he would complete me in some way, that my heart would overflow with a river of love the moment he was put in my arms. After all, we had waited a long time to have the baby, a long time before we became we, and a long time after. He was wanted, he was planned, and then planned again and again. And then after we gave up, we declared that plans couldn't always be plans, that each other and our careers would be more than enough to fill us in our days. A fortunate daredevil rogue, I'm not too shriveled to take the chance on egg, decided to divide and divide again. And he was born, and I waited for that promised rush. I'm waiting. I do love my son, and I do for my son. Sometimes I think John latched onto the decision that he and I were fine, just ourselves and our work, and forgot to move on when circumstances changed. Cam's being takes up so much of my mind and body. John, he compliments me that I am so much better at this and natural. And he makes every effort to learn, but can never get the diaper to stay on or wash him sufficiently in the cracks. It's just become easier just to do it myself, though the thoughts of Cam shattering to pieces in my hands consume me at all moments. I would be to blame, me. It is a relief to know that, at least for now, he's on the other side of the locked door, and no shattering at all would be my fault, unless I have given him the virus. And that's where I'm going to stop.
Ooh. Okay. Anyone? You can unmute and put your hand up if you want to ask a question. So anyone want to start? I have to move the iPad here from one to another. Dan, did you want to say something?
Yes, Jennifer, thank you so much. It certainly makes me want to go back and read the Yellow Wallpaper again. I'm interested in, you're obviously a very accomplished playwright, and you've done an awful lot of writing for various media. But I'm wondering, how does this going to work theatrically? So far, it is a very long monologue. And so uh, how do you feature it working on the stage?
So I don't know if it's the pandemic or just where I am right now, but I've been writing. I mean, first of all, I feel like John's voice will come in, or we'll actually have a very physical person there. It may just be the pandemic, but I've been kind of gravitating towards one person things, two person things, particularly just because of where we are right now in terms of performance and what people will be able to do. And because I really felt like this story, this if anyone doesn't know the story of the Yellow Wallpaper, which I probably should have prefaced with, it's a turn of the century story by Charlotte Perkins Gilman about a woman who is confined to her room for hysteria, essentially for postpartum depression, and it's based on Gilman's own experience. But it devolves into this thing where she sees this woman behind the yellow wallpaper. It's an iteration of herself, and she goes crazy. And I just feel like it is what I was hearing from people during the pandemic. And you'd be amazed at what directors can do with a monologue. There have been a couple of on Broadway recently. A Seawall, which is matched with another one called A Life, which were each an hour-long monologue that were performed by two different men, big actors. He's Jason Gyllenhaal, and I can't remember the other actors. I feel like it is a time in theater for flexibility, because we haven't been able to do anything besides, Zoom readings or performances for over a year now, and it's going to be a while before it comes back. So I think that a real actress could do much better with this than I can do. So there's that as well.
You do very well, but how long will the completed play run?
About between 45 minutes and an hour.
Oh, okay. So it's much easier to sustain a single voice over a relatively shorter period.
Right. And remember, there are points where John interrupts.
Uh-huh.
But I don't think it's fully done at all. And I'm sure there's more to flesh out, but I definitely got to like end of play last night, and I read it out loud this morning in the theater, and it ran about 45 minutes, but that's without any physicality. That's without any, anything. So it would be longer when it's staged, because it would be more more full.
Okay, Eileen?
I thought I really liked your language. I thought you're very articulate, and you did get at the problem in the short story, you know, of her mental state. And I thought that was very affecting. I think that you could do some things with music and kind of interior kind of sounds that you could punctuate this play with.
There is sound. I had not read them yet. So
Yeah,
there's sound of the essential workers and stuff like that.
I think that could enhance her interior state a great deal. Will she, at the end of the play, will she become mentally ill? Will she devolve as this poor woman did in the Yellow Wallpaper?
So where it goes right now, so there's the kind of fever dreams she has having COVID. Like she loses her sense of taste and smell. She's having these fever dreams. She's kind of connecting in a different way with Charlotte, and she's having these kind of obsessions with not just the woman in the story who starts calling Lottie because she's a derivative of Charlotte, but with Charlotte herself. And then John gives her more information about Charlotte Perkins Gilman, which is stuff I found out really recently. And I've been a fan of hers for a long time. I've been a big fan of her book, Herland, for 20 years. And, but that she was actually, as much as she was a feminist, she was also a racist and an anti-Semite. And so it's also the realization that this person is not who she thought she was, and about confronting that as well. So that's what I'm aiming to get at. I don't think it's there yet, but that's where I am.
You know, I'd like to hear a great deal more about John sometimes and about the husbands here. Perkins, in her story, she didn't say a great deal about this man, but there are hints that he is not very good as a husband and that he's really working against her, you know. So I would love to hear more about him too. Maybe he could insert some lines, he says, that kind of reinforce some issues.
Yeah, they're there. They're in the next 30 minutes.
And one last comment, your stage directions reminded me of O'Neill.
Oh,
you know, yeah, I heard O'Neill in there. Very nice.
It channels him back in the trunk house. You definitely feel some energy there.
So, anyone else? I'm not
sure how to raise my hand on that. I'm not that familiar with it, but I think I already love the play. I love listening to Jennifer, but I kept thinking I'd like to see in a live play John on the other side of the wall and reacting to some of the things Charlotte is saying or thinking out loud. And I could see, a lot of possibilities there. Just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, some of that will just depend on the staging, because I feel like this could be done with an actress actually speaking the words of the husband. This could be done with an actor on stage with her. This could be done, with a voice coming in. So it's all really going to depend on. I have a big trust in my actors and big trust in directors, and love to see what they bring, because I feel like theater is all about collaboration, and I just want to, it could be one way in one production and a different way in another production. Should I be lucky enough
but you
to
have to write the words.
Well, I have to write the words, but I don't have to write. I don't have to. I want to allow for the flexibility of how John presents.
Right.
In the words.
Thank you.
So,
Trudy,
dialogue is all mine.
Trudy, you have to unmute. Trudy, unmute. There you go.
Okay, this is just a comment about Dan's thing about the soliloquy. I remember seeing Michelle Moraine do a 45-minute soliloquy in Tony Kushner's play, Homebody Kabul. And she just sat there in a chair on a, I think just a spotlight on her. And it was phenomenal. I mean, it rivets you. So I do think that you don't have to worry about the length of it, Dan. I think it can really work.
It's also about expectation. You may have come into this expecting it would be something with dialogue that went back and forth, and it feels more, you weren't expecting a monologue.
Mm-hmm.
My concern, I think you've already relieved me of my concern by telling me that she does develop COVID. And therefore, there's a progression and a journey that she will go through physically, which will give the actress a lot more to do. Learning that, having you tell me that she loses her sense of taste and smell, and I'm not as worried about the fact that it's just a monologue.
It's interesting because it's unusual to present just the beginning of something to people and not have what's to come and kind of get thoughts on it. It's a whole different thing. So
how far have you got with it the last couple of weeks?
I started it here. I had hoped to do all this research before I came, but life kind of got in the way. And I have a beginning, middle, and end. I mean, I have about 45 minutes. So, and I know where it goes to. It may not get there quite the right way yet, but I have a good first draft I would like to hear actors play with a little bit. So I'm so grateful to be here. I haven't had, similar to the character, like I haven't had just uncomplicated space and time to write for years. So it's what I do for a living, but I'm always kind of like sucked into all the other day-to-day stuff and parenting and and not usually able to take off like a week or two and take away from trying to like pitch for film and TV and things like that. So it's just been such a gift to be here. So, if you ever have alumni come back, hello.
Someone in the chat room put up a note about Before Breakfast. Do you know that play of O'Neill's?
I don't. I'm going to have to read that.
Because, Eric, are you there? It basically, there's one actor off stage all the time. Am I right? Anyone who's with O'Neill? And so that's the sort of the feeling I was getting as you you presented it. So I also wanted to know about how you go about looking through the plays you've written. There have been all sorts of different themes. How you choose something as a play and how your process of writing it.
That's a good question. There's kind of two ways. Usually it kind of takes hold of me and I need to write it, or it or someone says, here's a workshop, you're gonna have to write a new play in it, go, and I find the thing. So like with my the play that I had up in LA before shut down, it's a play called 8 Nights. It's about a woman who is a German Jewish refugee who comes here in the 1940s, and 8 nights of her life over 8 nights of Hanukkah over 8 decades, culminating in right before right when the Muslim ban was happening. And it's very much reflects like the trauma in the Japanese American community and the Black African American community and the LGBTQ community. And that came out of me just kind of ruminating on oh, I don't recall that there's ever really been a Hanukkah play. And wouldn't it be interesting to do one where there are 8 scenes over 8 nights? And oh, what if it's not the same year? What if it all takes place in the same place, but it's different decades? And then someone in, I think it was January of 2017, was tweeting the manifest of the St. Louis, which was the ship that got turned back, that had 900 people on it, most of them Jews escaping from Germany. And that ship was turned back from Cuba and turned back from the United States and turned back from any other place that it wanted to go. And it went back to Europe, and about a third of the people on it died in the Holocaust and in camps. And it was very much, to me, parallel of what was happening at that point in time with the Syrian refugee crisis. And like, you could look at the 1930s articles in the New York Times and the current articles in the New York Times and almost sub in Syrian, Muslim for Jewish. And I just, that's where that play started. It started with a girl coming to New York who had been on the St. Louis, had been supposed to meet her father in New York with her mother and sisters, but she ultimately was the only one who survived. And then it just moved forward in time. And I'm in a group in LA called Playwrights Union. Like every January, February, we do a challenge where we kind of, if you want to, you throw your hat over the wall and you say, I'm going to write the first draft of a play in a month. And that was, I just did it in the challenge. It kind of lined up for me. And I got the first draft in a month. Another play of mine called Out of Orbit, which is about a woman who's a project engineer on the Mars Exploration Rover mission. That took me like 12 years to write because I would keep learning the science, and then I would go back, and then I would forget the science, and then I would put it in a drawer, and I couldn't figure out how to make it work. And then I got into Sundance. They have a theater lab with the first act, and I was forced to, it's good when I'm forced to get the thing done, because I was forced to actually finish a draft and get through it. And once you have it, I think it's much easier to figure out what it is. So that's kind of how I come to things like that.
So Eric, are you there? Is he there?
Yes, I am.
It'd be nice to see you. Do you have any questions or comments? There you go.
Yeah, nothing at the moment. I was actually going to ask about the sort of narrative quality, but you've talked about all the different ways that you would bring kind of a vibrancy to a theatricality, which I totally see it. The psychological stuff is rich area for you, I think.
Yeah, I feel like I wasn't sure how it was going to manifest, truthfully, but this is how it is. So,
Okay.
And I do think right now, like, I don't have an interest in writing a big thing that has a lot of people needing to be on a stage, because I feel like we don't know when we're going to be able to do that. So there's a part of me kind of in that mode right now.
I did catch earlier that the mention of before breakfast, and I just want to share with you one thing that does maybe seem germane to your some of the stuff you were developing, which is that before breakfast basically is you see a woman, and it's a monologue, but you see just at one point there's a man in the other room the whole time, and you see his hand at one point. And I've just gotten kind of really curious or interested in the idea of what that experience would be like to see it once, like have an audience see it traditionally, and then basically flip the room around and hear it, but see everything that's happening in the other room.
That would be really cool.
Yeah, I just thought of that sort of partitioning in your story. Maybe there's something there.
There's like a Norman Conquest. Was that the play, the Norman Conquest?
Where they jump into different spaces.
Yeah, but there's this dinner party is going on here, but then you have another play that's like that what's happening in the other room while this is happening there, which is really, really kind of cool. Yeah. That would be interesting to know the John side of things as opposed to just her side of things. But I'll have to is there a copy of Before Breakfast up at the library?
Yes, if you look at one of the Library of America, like 3-volume set in the room,
yeah,
it's in there. It's in the first for volume 1.
I'll look at that tomorrow. There is a little bit in here about where John starts talking about O'Neill's letters to Carlotta, So there's a definitely like an influence of where I was in the space that I was in. It was really fun. And there's also an opera singer in it, Eric.
Oh, that'll be good. So let's see. Anyone else want to ask any questions or make any comments? Well, we will all look for. Oh, I want to thank you because I'd never read the Yellow Wallpaper. So I got a book and I read quite a lot about her. The book I got was a book of her collection of her writings, and the person who wrote about them was very interesting about how she started. She didn't call them daycares for children, or all her.
Wait, I didn't hear that.
Was it 1898 or something when she read the book, when she wrote the book, and she's talking about lots of things that are happening today.
Yeah, there's a real interesting kind of, one of the things that really have stuck with me about women during the pandemic is that there's been this kind of huge emotional burden put on them where they would welcome 2 weeks alone in a room because they've been, they went from probably having a job or parenting or both, but like not all at the same time. And now they've become teachers and taking care of their home. And then there's been like this whole emotional burden on it, and women are really wiped out. And here we are in the fourth wave of feminism. And I don't really know how far we've come when your idea is like, you could have it all, but you could have it all doesn't mean you want to be doing it all at the same time. So I'm just kind of interested in the difference between Charlotte's day, where basically women, especially women of that class, were told to not work, not tax their brains, not read a book, because that would disturb them. And women now who are supposed to be doing everything at all hours. So I'm kind of sinking into the fact that she was considered one of the foremothers of feminism, yet like feminism is a totally different thing now than it was then, and we're still kind of stuck, in a patriarchy.
How old is the baby?
15 months.
Well, interesting. Okay, well, I'm sure that you only have a couple more days left, and then you're off home again. So
that's true.
Yeah.
Thank you. I can't thank you enough. This has been an amazing experience, and it's such a beautiful place, and it's so fertile, and it's such a gift to a writer to have this time, and it's the whole Virginia Woolf thing, but it is true that a room of your own that you get to. And here it's 3 rooms. I have San Damiano, and I have the library, and I have the trunk room, and it's it's just beautiful. There's so much there, and I'm telling everyone I know to apply, and yet I still want to come back. So.
And by the way, you heard it from Tira, who was one of our playwrights last year. It was last year she was here, wasn't
it? Last fall, right? Tira?
Yes.
Yeah, Tira is a friend, and she is also in that group that I talked about, Playwrights Union. And when she was posting something about where she was, I was like, where are you? And what are you doing? And I want to know. And she said, apply. And I did. And I was so lucky. So,
Ellie, is there anything in the chat room that needs to be mentioned?
No, I think we're all up to date. I don't see anything that needs to be commented on. Thank you.
Okay.
Jennifer,
yeah.
If you search Before Breakfast on YouTube, you can find full productions.
Oh, great. I don't even have to read, is what you're saying.
That's right. You can take a break. I thought it was very enjoyable. I thought, when we were listening, you could relate to so much that you were talking about the collective COVID experience. So I'm very interested to see it one day.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering whether people are going to want to see something about COVID right now.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not going to write anything about COVID during COVID. But I think now that in the beginning, when everyone thought it was a blip, there was a big question about including it, especially for things in film and television, because that's often more immediate. And everybody kept saying, no, it'll be a blip. And now that it's not a blip, beyond a blip, it's going to be you know, 2 years before theater gets back onto its feet from the beginning of this, at least, you know, I mean, we're at 14 months. So, you know, I'm interested to see when we see plays that are on stage without people, you know, in shields or in plexiglass. And I don't know, I think it's going to have to be addressed in a way that I was not expecting a year ago when we thought this would be over quickly.
Actually, Bill Bowers, who I was just talking about, beginning to talk about when you came back, he had COVID, and his play is going to include things about COVID too. So,
is he the next person coming?
No, Ming Ho Tu's coming, and he's writing about silkworms.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I think he's relating himself to. It sounds like a very shy young man. I have a feeling he's shy, and he also in his write-up said something about he doesn't really feel accepted anywhere. So it'll be interesting to meet him and see.
Well, he was accepted by you, so there you go.
Yes, yes. So hopefully that'll make him feel very comfortable when he comes. So thank you all for coming, and if you have any other questions, I'm sure that we could get them to Jen to answer, and we'll be very interested to read your play eventually.
Yes,
Thank you.
definitely.
And,
Thank you.
you know, feel free, you know where I am for the next couple of days to just come by, whatever.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.